Hi, I'm Malis. At my own engagement party, my mother tried to poison my grandmother with a smile. When I stopped her, she slapped me in front of 500 people. "You always ruin everything," she whispered. But that glass, it wasn't meant for Grandma. And the terrifying part? I didn't realize that until my mother collapsed. What would you have done? Before we begin, have you ever doubted your own family? Let me tell you what happened next. Charlottesville in late spring has a certain quietness after rain. That day, it smelled of wet bark and lilacs, sweet, almost cloying. The vineyard my mother chose for my engagement party was perfect, at least by her standards. Rows of string lights hung like a wedding catalog cover. Every napkin was folded into laurel leaves, every table set to match the wine labels. I remember thinking, even then, that nothing here felt like me. I'm Malis Ridgrave, 38, youngest daughter. Wedding photographer, which is ironic now. That night, I felt like a background character in my own life. My mother, Valora, made sure of it. She'd planned every detail, invited people I barely knew, while my closest friends found excuses not to come. Looking back, I know why. The party buzzed around me. I remember drifting through conversations, nodding, smiling when expected. My fiancé, Grant, was somewhere near the dessert table, laughing too loud with one of my uncles. I stood near Grandma Isolde, her silver hair neat as ever, her laugh sharp. She was the only one who made this night feel like home. That's when Valora appeared. "Malis," she called, loud enough to turn heads. She carried 2 glasses of red wine. I saw her coming from across the patio, her smile stretched, eyes gleaming. "For my daughter's future," she said, handing 1 glass toward me and 1 toward Grandma. But the moment the wine reached me, I froze. The scent wasn't right, subtle, but wrong. Like cough syrup buried under oak. I told myself I was imagining it, but as Grandma reached for her glass, something inside me tightened. Without thinking, I switched them. "Ladies first," I said, laughing softly, making it seem playful. Grandma chuckled and took the other glass, sipping without hesitation. Valora's expression didn't change, not 1 inch. I felt her eyes on me, felt the weight of her smile shift. Then she said nothing, only turned, blending back into the crowd. I tried to shake it off. Maybe the wine was just a bad batch. Maybe I was overthinking everything, like always. But my stomach knotted. I watched Grandma closely after that, half expecting her to sway, to cough, to... Nothing happened. She was fine. But then 30 minutes later, someone screamed. I was near the edge of the patio when I heard the commotion. Chairs scraped. Voices rose. I turned toward the noise and saw Valora collapse near the family photo setup, her wine glass shattered at her feet. People rushed, phones out, guests panicked. I stood frozen. But that wasn't the worst part. Before that moment, something else happened, something I hadn't let myself remember until now. When I swapped the glasses, Valora had caught my wrist. Her hand clamped tight, hard enough to make my skin burn. And then she slapped me, right there, in front of hundreds of people. Her voice hissed against the silence she'd created, sharp as broken glass. "You always ruin everything." Then, like nothing happened, she stepped back, letting the scene move on. I didn't react, not then. I stood there, face burning from the sting, heart rattling inside my ribs. No one spoke to me. No one asked what happened. They all looked away. So I stood still, watching, listening. Valora lay unconscious now. Paramedics leaned over her. Someone was shouting instructions. Guests whispered in clusters, half concerned, half curious. I felt no fear. Only one question coiled in my mind as I looked back at the table. At the untouched laurel-folded napkin resting next to Grandma's empty wine glass. Was that glass meant for Grandma? Or for me? I stood there, watching the ambulance drive away into the Virginia morning, its sirens oddly silent now that distance dulled them. I didn't know then. That was the exact moment when everything in my life began to come apart. I barely remembered leaving the vineyard. One of my mother's old friends offered to drive me home, asking gentle questions I couldn't answer. The next thing I knew, I was sitting alone in my apartment, in silence, and the silence felt heavier than the slap. The rain came just before dawn. It tapped at my bedroom window like someone trying to wake me. I lay there, watching the gray light seep through the curtains, replaying every second from the night before. The glass, the smell. Her voice cutting through the air, my mother's voice. You always ruin everything. Curtis was beside me, breathing softly, unaware that I hadn't slept. I turned toward him, not to wake him, but just needing proof that someone real was still there. My hand hovered over his shoulder, but I didn't touch him. Instead, I sat up and stared at the wall. When he woke, it was almost 6. He rubbed his eyes, glanced at me, and asked quietly, "Did you sleep at all?" I didn't answer. I was too busy listening to the echo in my head. The ambulance, the glass, her collapsing. Curtis made coffee without asking. He tried small talk, but his words rolled past me without landing. At some point, he sat down across from me at the kitchen table, his face creased with worry. "Milas, it's over. She's stable. Your mother's fine." I didn't look at him. I kept staring at the unopened wine bottle sitting on the counter, a leftover from the party, still sealed. "I'm not fine," I whispered. He hesitated. Then, gently, "She's your mother." I turned toward him then. "That doesn't mean she loves me." Curtis said nothing. The quiet stretched until it hurt. Later that morning, I found myself scrolling through old messages without realizing it. I was looking for something. I didn't know what, until I landed on Ria's name. She hadn't come to the party. My best friend, my oldest friend. She was supposed to stand next to me last night. Instead, there'd only been silence from her. I pulled up her last message. "Hey, Malis. I know you're overwhelmed. Your mom told me you didn't want extra people right now. Said you'd asked her to keep visitors away this week. Just checking in. Love you." I stared at that message for too long. I hadn't said that. I never told Ria not to come. My fingers trembled. I scrolled up and reread every exchange, hoping I'd forgotten something, missed something. But no, it was clear now. My mother had reached out to Ria before the party. She'd told her not to come, and she'd made it sound like the request came from me. She isolated me. I felt the floor tilt beneath me as memory after memory slammed into place. College. My old roommate leaving without explanation after Mom visited. Friends fading, always after family events where Mom had been concerned about me. I'd believed I was the problem, but the problem had been engineered. "Curtis," I said suddenly, my voice cracking. He looked up from the sofa, where he'd been pretending to read. "Did my mom talk to you before the party?" His silence was louder than I could bear. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy. "You don't want to hear this." "Tell me." He hesitated. Then, "About 2 weeks ago, she called, asked to meet, said it was urgent." My heart stopped. "She offered me money," Curtis said, voice flat. "She said if I left you, she'd help cover my student loans. Said you were fragile, unstable. That staying with you would ruin my career." I closed my eyes. "And then," he added softly, "she threatened to dig up that thing from my past." I opened my eyes. "What thing?" "That fight. The one from college. The one I thought was buried. She said if I didn't accept her offer, she'd make sure the world saw me for what I was." I didn't cry. I just sat there, listening. She hadn't just poisoned my party. She'd been poisoning my life. Curtis stood and crossed the room toward me, but I stepped back. "Malis, don't." He stopped. I couldn't bear comfort. Not yet. I turned away from him and walked to the kitchen, where the unopened wine bottle sat like an accusation. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "She's not protecting me." Curtis didn't answer. "I think she's been controlling me," I said aloud, more to myself than him. In that moment, I understood. My mother didn't see me as a daughter. She saw me as a project, something to manage, to control. I picked up my phone and typed a message with shaking fingers. "Tell me everything Mom said to you." I hit send to Rhea before I could lose courage. Rhea's reply came at 4:12 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my phone vibrated, the screen lighting up like it was screaming in the darkness. I grabbed it so fast I nearly dropped it. The message wasn't what I expected, not even close. "Malis, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. Your mom called me weeks ago. She said you'd been having episodes, that you didn't want people around. She told me to step back for your sake. I believed her. I'm so sorry." Then came the second message, shorter. "Also, I never told you, but after her call, I got this." Attached was a screenshot, a text message, no sender name, just a blank, faceless number. "You're making it worse. Walk away while you can." My stomach turned. My skin prickled, cold despite the stale warmth of the apartment. I stared at the screen for minutes, unable to look away. The timestamp told me everything I needed to know. It came the same night Mom called Rhea. I set the phone down slowly. My fingers felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. I opened my laptop, pulled up the metadata from the screenshot. I don't know what I expected, maybe nothing, but there it was. The message had come from a burner texting app. Untraceable, at least for most people, but not for me. Years working as a photographer, I'd learned metadata doesn't always hide as well as people think. And Mom, she was smart, but not in the ways that mattered. I traced the IP mask. It led to Charlottesville. I swallowed hard. That was all I needed. I stood up too quickly, knocking the chair against the counter. Curtis stirred on the couch, but didn't wake. My head spun. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't catch my breath. She didn't just isolate me. She threatened my friends. She made sure I had no one. I thought about waking Curtis, telling him. But what would I say? What could I say? Instead, I paced, back and forth, kitchen to living room to bathroom. I caught sight of myself in the mirror, and almost didn't recognize the woman looking back, pale, hollow-eyed, scared. It was nearly dawn when the next message came. This time, it wasn't Ria, it was Gavin. His name flashing on my phone felt like a ghost stepping into my apartment. I stared at the message until I couldn't anymore. Saw what happened. Are you okay? I know it's been years, but if you want to talk, please. I hesitated. My first instinct was to ignore it, but my second, I called him. The sound of his voice, after so many years, broke something inside me. We didn't say hello. We didn't exchange pleasantries. He just said, "Where are you?" And I told him. 15 minutes later, he was standing in my apartment doorway. He looked the same. Older, but not changed. I didn't hug him. I just stepped aside and let him in. We sat opposite each other, like strangers. "I thought you hated me," he said quietly. I looked down. "I thought you betrayed me." He nodded, like that made sense. I didn't. Silence. I whispered, "Did Mom?" He answered before I could finish. "She sent you photos, right?" I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. "Photos of me. In that bar. With that woman." Another nod. They were staged. My eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. "That woman. She was a co-worker. Your mom. She paid her to set me up. She had someone take those photos. She even tried to send the pictures to my residency director. Said I was mentally unstable. Said I was a danger to patients." My whole body felt numb. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "I tried. You wouldn't answer. Then your number changed." I froze. "I thought you changed it to block me." "I didn't." His eyes met mine. "Then someone else did." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He stayed for another hour, talking softly, filling in the missing pieces of a past I thought I knew. When he left, I didn't walk him to the door. I just sat there, staring at the floor. Hours passed, maybe minutes. I couldn't tell anymore. At some point, I moved, mechanically, like sleepwalking. I found myself in the storage closet, digging through boxes I hadn't opened in years. I didn't know what I was looking for, until I found it, a battered pink box, from childhood. It smelled like dust and old lilacs. Inside were scraps of a life I barely remembered. Birthday cards, school drawings, a ribbon from some long-forgotten spelling bee, and then, buried beneath, something else. A torn piece of lined notebook paper. It wasn't mine. It was Delea's handwriting. I froze. I unfolded it slowly, carefully, like it might disintegrate in my hands. I think Mom reads my emails. She knows things I never told her. That single sentence hit me harder than the slap at the party. I sat down on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, the paper trembling in my hand. I wasn't alone. She'd done it to Delea too. She wasn't protecting us. She was watching us, controlling us. I whispered the words aloud, needing to hear them, needing to believe them. This isn't protection. This is surveillance. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I needed to talk to my sister. The door opened slower than I expected, like Delea hesitated before letting me in. When she finally stood there in the doorway, I almost didn't recognize her. My sister had always carried herself with a quiet confidence. Now her frame seemed smaller, her shoulders drawn inward, as if trying to disappear inside herself. Her skin was pale, her hair limp, her eyes hollow like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, maybe years. I said nothing. Neither did she. The silence between us stretched too long. "Come in," she said finally, stepping aside. Her house in Falls Grove smelled faintly of lavender and something sterile. It didn't feel like her. Not the sister I remembered from our childhood summers. Back then, she laughed loudly, slammed doors when angry, dreamed big and said so. The woman in front of me now was diminished, controlled. We sat in her small living room. Neither of us touched the coffee mugs she'd set down. She avoided my gaze. I forced myself to speak first. "I found one of your old notes." Her head snapped up. "The one where you said, 'Mom reads your emails.'" Delea closed her eyes slowly, like hearing it aloud physically hurt. When she opened them, she whispered, "I hoped you'd never know." "Why?" "Because if you knew, you'd start seeing it too." I felt my throat tighten. "What happened to you, Delea?" She looked at me then, not as my sister, but as someone who'd been waiting for someone to ask that exact question. "You remember Sophia?" Her voice cracked on the name. I nodded, barely. "We were together, in college." I blinked. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." She rubbed her hands together, a nervous habit from when we were kids. "Mom found out. Somehow. She called Sophia's parents, threatened them with a lawsuit, accused Sophia of corrupting me." "What?" "She told me if I didn't end it, she'd have me expelled. Said she'd tell the dean I was unstable. Said she'd make sure Sophia's family sued me." I couldn't breathe. "She forced you to end it. She forced me to choose between Sophia and surviving." I whispered, "I'm sorry." She shook her head, smiling bitterly. "That wasn't the end." "What do you mean?" "After Sophia, Mom said I needed therapy." My stomach dropped. She picked the counselor, came with me to the first sessions, sat outside the office when I was inside. "That's illegal." Delea laughed, hollow. "Not when the counselor's someone she paid." I felt dizzy. She told the counselor what to focus on, what to treat. She made sure I believed I was broken. I couldn't sit anymore. I stood up, pacing the small room. "And you believed her? What choice did I have?" I stopped, turned to face her. "You were never broken." Her voice was so small when she answered. "I know that now." Silence settled between us, heavy as wet concrete. I thought of every friend I'd lost, every person who'd drifted away from me without reason, every opportunity that slipped through my fingers. Not because of bad luck, not because I wasn't good enough, because Mom made sure of it. All these years, I thought she feared people hurting me. She didn't. She feared anyone loving me. "Why?" I whispered. Delea's answer came so soft I almost didn't hear. "She doesn't want daughters, Melis. She wants mirrors." For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then I said, not loud, but steady, "Not anymore." We sat in silence after that. No apology could undo what had been taken from her, or from me. When I finally stood to leave, Delea didn't ask me to stay. She only said, "Be careful." I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the morning fog, the weight of everything pressing heavier with every mile. My phone buzzed as I turned into my street. It was Rhea. A message, short and sharp. "It's from the venue. You'll want to see this." Rhea didn't speak when I arrived. She just stood there in the hallway of her apartment complex, holding out a small flash drive between her thumb and forefinger, like she didn't want to touch it more than she had to. Her face said everything. Whatever was on that drive wasn't something she wanted to carry. I stepped inside without a word. The apartment was quiet, shades drawn despite the morning light pressing against the windows. It smelled faintly of burnt coffee and last night's Chinese takeout. Ria closed the door softly behind me, locking it twice. She walked straight to her desk, hesitated, then pushed her laptop open. The screen flickered to life. "I didn't know what to do with this," she said, barely above a whisper. She plugged the drive in, clicked twice, and then leaned back, away from the screen, like she couldn't stand to watch it again. "From the venue's security system," she murmured. I stood behind her, arms crossed tightly over my chest, though it did nothing to stop the chill that crawled up my spine. On screen, the footage loaded. There it was, the kitchen at the vineyard. Late evening, the night of my engagement party, stainless steel counters gleaming under overhead lights, catering trays lined up like soldiers, and in the middle of it, alone, my mother, Valora. She looked composed, calm, hair perfect, makeup flawless, like she'd rehearsed every step of whatever she was about to do. I watched as she placed 2 wine glasses on the counter. From her purse, she pulled out a small dropper bottle, something dark, unlabeled. With methodical precision, she squeezed droplets into one of the glasses, pausing between each. Then she stirred it gently with a cocktail straw, wiped the rim clean with a folded napkin, and topped the glass with a small laurel leaf napkin. Not once did she hesitate. And then, this was what stopped my heart, she looked toward the microwave door. In the reflection of the stainless steel, she smiled. A slow, faint smile, like she was proud of herself. I felt sick. "I watched this 3 times last night," Ria said softly. "I couldn't sleep." I didn't answer. On screen, the footage showed me entering the frame. There I was, oblivious, approaching her. Valora didn't flinch. She calmly lifted the covered glass, the one she'd poisoned, and handed it to me. I had no memory of that moment feeling strange. The video ended. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I reached for my laptop, opened it. I created a folder. I typed the name slowly, deliberately, like each letter weighed something heavy. Documented patterns, Valora Ridgrave. Into it, I dragged the security footage Ria had copied. I added the photos from Valora's medicine cabinet, the prescription bottles she shouldn't have had, ones I'd photographed weeks earlier without understanding why I felt I needed to. I added the note from Mr. Cletus, my neighbor, who mentioned seeing her disposing of chemicals the night before the party. Back then, it sounded like harmless gossip. Now it wasn't. I sat there for a while, breathing carefully. No more doubting, no more assuming maybe I'd misunderstood. My mother had tried to poison me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was done. "Ria," I said quietly, "I need your help." Ria nodded immediately. By noon, the plan was set. I'd texted Curtis, Tamsin, and Delea, asked them to come to my apartment for lunch, said it was important. Curtis showed up first, tense, hands in pockets. He didn't ask questions. Delea arrived next. She looked fragile but determined, her eyes flickering around like she didn't know whether to trust the walls. Tamsin was last. He carried the same air of forced casualness our whole family learned from years of pretending nothing was ever wrong. Then came the final guest. Valora. She walked in carrying a glass baking dish. "Lemon bars," she announced cheerfully, as if it was just another Sunday. "Thought I'd bring something sweet." She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Her perfume smelled expensive. Her smile was flawless. Let her think it's her stage. I watched her settle herself on my couch like royalty taking her throne. I moved to my laptop, plugged in the flash drive. The TV screen lit up as I mirrored the laptop display. No words, just footage. Valora froze. On the screen, there she was, alone in the kitchen. Dropper bottle, stirring. The reflection smile. The silence in the room now was thicker than the air before a thunderstorm. Finally, I spoke. Calm, steady. You tried to poison me. Valora didn't flinch. Her answer was cold. I was protecting you. From what? From a life you couldn't control? From people who might love me without your permission? The words stayed stuck in my throat. Behind me, a chair scraped suddenly against the floor. Tamsin stood up. His face had gone pale, and then he said something I didn't expect. You knew Delia was pregnant when she drank that glass, didn't you? Nobody said a word. Tamsin stood there, staring at Valora as if seeing her for the first time. Then he reached for Delia's hand, her fingers trembling, and simply walked out. No argument, no final look, just silence. Curtis lingered. I thought he might say something, anything, but he didn't. His jaw tightened, and he stepped around Valora like she was just another piece of furniture. He didn't look back. Rhea was the last to move. She hesitated in the doorway, eyes flickering toward me. Her voice was flat when she spoke. She's not done. And then she was gone. I was left standing alone in my apartment, Valora still sitting there like she owned the air itself. I waited for her to explain, apologize, anything, but she didn't. Her silence said more than any words could have, and when she finally stood and walked past me, her perfume brushed my skin like a slap. I didn't follow her. That night, I sat at my kitchen table long after the sun went down, the same untouched cup of tea cooling by my elbow. The apartment felt too large, too hollow. I kept waiting for the weight in my chest to ease. It didn't. Then the phone rang. It was Rhea. Her voice shook. May, I just got a message. What kind? She paused. I could hear her breathing, shaky. Anonymous. You should have stayed in your lane. This isn't your story. I closed my eyes. You think it's her? Rhea didn't answer. I know it's her, I said softly. I'm fine, Malis. I'm not worried about me. I'm not either, I whispered. I'm in survival mode now. We hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, until sleep took me sometime before dawn. The next morning, I woke to something worse. My inbox was full. Messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. College acquaintances, distant relatives, even clients, all asking the same thing. Are you okay? I opened Facebook. At first, I thought someone had hacked my account, but no, my account was fine. It was the new one that wasn't. A fake profile, my name, my photo, but not me. The page was filled with vague, bitter rants, screenshots of private conversations taken out of context, even photos of Curtis, one of him holding a wine glass at the engagement party, captioned in bright red letters, "Toxic love." I felt like I couldn't breathe. Valora didn't just want to hurt me, she wanted to erase me. She wanted the world to doubt me before I could even open my mouth. The phone rang again. Curtis. His voice was hollow. My contract's frozen. What? The documentary. The investors pulled out this morning. They said, They received a tip. From who? Someone told them I have a drug problem. They referenced sealed records from 10 years ago. Valora. She'd threatened it weeks earlier. I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't. I'll fix this, I whispered. He didn't answer. I think we both knew I couldn't. When the call ended, I sat down on the floor. Not the chair, not the couch, the floor. I curled up against the wall of my apartment, phone still in my hand. I opened the fake Facebook profile again, scrolling mindlessly, post after post, lie after lie, my life bleeding away in public. And I thought, if I keep fighting, I lose myself. If I stop, she wins. It felt like drowning. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even scared. I was nothing. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe. Then, from somewhere far away, I heard the softest sound. A knock. I didn't move. Then a voice. Melis? It was Delea. I need to tell you something. She stood there like a ghost. Delea. My sister, but not the woman I remembered. Her hands shook as she pulled her cardigan tighter around her, as if it could protect her from something neither of us could name out loud. Her eyes weren't red from crying. They were hollow, as if she'd run out of tears long before she got here. I stepped aside. She sat at my kitchen table without speaking, staring down at the scarred wood like it might offer answers. The silence stretched until it hurt. She told Tamsin I had a psychiatric episode. I frowned. Who did? But I knew. Delea didn't even say the name. She didn't need to. She told him that's why I collapsed at the party, that I'm unstable, that I might be dangerous. To the baby. Her voice cracked on that last word. I sat across from her, my heart thudding. She's telling people you're a danger to your own child. Delea nodded. She said it's genetic, that we're both fragile. I felt the words hit like fists. I'm not fragile. No, she said softly. But she needed people to believe I was. Delea lifted her gaze to meet mine then, and in that moment, I saw it. Not weakness, not fear, survival. She forced the diagnosis. Her voice barely carried, but it didn't shake this time. After Sophia, after everything, she made me see a therapist. But it wasn't therapy. It was control. The counselor worked for her. The diagnosis of emotional instability went on my college records. I lost my internship. People stopped calling. She swallowed. I thought maybe it was my fault. Maybe I was broken. I reached for her hand, and for the first time, she let me. We sat like that, in silence. And in that silence, something shifted. She wasn't alone. Neither was I. I looked at her, really looked at her, and the pieces finally clicked. Valora never feared the people in our lives. She feared their love, their support, because those things made us strong enough to walk away. She doesn't need to admit what she did, I whispered. Delea looked at me, confused. She needs to be stopped. I stood up. Not in anger, in clarity, the shaking, the crying, the endless questioning. I let it go. What I needed now wasn't another confrontation. I needed strategy. While Delea sat there, watching me quietly, I pulled my laptop from the counter, set up the external drive, created a new folder. Documented Patterns, Valora Ridgegrave. I added the security footage from the venue, the prescription photos, Mr. Cletus's eyewitness statement, screenshots of the fake Facebook account, the threatening messages, every file, every piece of proof, organized. I pulled out the small recording device I used for interviews, checked the batteries, prepared backups, not for a fight, for exposure. I didn't plan to argue anymore. I planned to end it. The morning sunlight crept through the blinds, casting long shadows across my floor as I worked. Delia watched without speaking. When I finally sat down again, she whispered, "What now?" I met her eyes. Now we stopped letting her control the story. For the first time in what felt like years, I saw a flicker of something in my sister's expression. Hope. The quiet buzz of my phone interrupted. A message. It was from Ria. I opened it. It was a screenshot. An old photo of me, probably from high school. Valora had posted it publicly. The caption read, "When daughters refuse to be saved." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted the message without blinking. "She just made her last mistake," I whispered. I wasn't angry anymore, not even tired. I was ready. The morning was quiet, unnervingly so. I sat at my kitchen table, the same place where my sister had broken down hours before, and opened the folder on my laptop. Documented patterns. Valora Ridgegrave. Every file sat there, waiting. I stared at them, my fingers resting on the trackpad but not moving. This wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about survival. Mine, Delia's, maybe even Curtis's. Before I could act, my phone buzzed. It was Curtis. A short message. "Call me. Now." My stomach clenched. I called immediately. "It's her," he said, voice shaking. "An email just went out. From you." I froze. She's pretending to be me? She sent it to my partners, claimed I'm unstable, that I'm sabotaging my own wedding to get attention. There's more. I closed my eyes, bracing. She said I relapsed. Drugs. That old issue from my past. It's all over now. I heard him breathing hard on the other end. "I'm sorry, Melis. I can't fix this." I wanted to tell him it wasn't his to fix, but I hung up instead, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. I needed my mind clear. A second notification lit up my phone before I could put it down. This time it was a Facebook alert. In a local community group, a post showed up. A photo of Delia sitting at that same kitchen table from years ago, captioned, "Another Ridgegrave tragedy. Pray for the unborn." I didn't click on the post. I didn't need to. She was using Delia now. She wanted us isolated. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I opened my video editor. 10 minutes. No faces, no names, just the truth. I laid the footage out carefully. Valora, in the kitchen, preparing the wine glasses, her hand steady, the dropper, the stir, the faint smile caught in the reflection of the microwave door. Then the prescriptions, photos from her own bathroom cabinet, the neighbor's statement, a simple audio clip, Delia's journal entry, scanned, line after line of evidence. I recorded my voice over the top, even, calm. This is not a story about hatred. It's about survival. When family hurts, it's not always visible, but it leaves scars. I titled the video, "When Family Hurts, The Invisible War at Home." I watched it once, without blinking. Then I hit publish. I didn't check the views. I didn't care. I had other work to do. By noon, the small rented hall was set. Curtis was there, pale and silent. Delia Standing beside Tamsin, her shoulders squared. Rhea lingered near the back, protective but wary. And then, as I knew she would, Valora arrived. She wore soft blue. The shade she always said made her look approachable. She smiled as she walked in, a plate of her signature lemon bars in hand. "I thought we could make this civil," she said lightly. I didn't answer. I just nodded to Curtis. He plugged in the flash drive. The projector hummed to life. I didn't speak as the footage played. I didn't need to. Valora stood there, arms crossed, watching herself on screen as the images rolled. The dropper, the stirring. The faint smile, then the pill bottles, then the journal page, then silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Finally, Valora's voice broke the silence. "You've always been dramatic." I turned to her, my voice steady. "No, I've been quiet." For the first time, her smile faltered. She tried again. "I was protecting you." I didn't argue. Then she snapped, "I made you. I can unmake you." The words cracked through the room like glass shattering. Curtis stepped back. Delea flinched. Tamsin's jaw tightened. And Rhea just shook her head slowly, as if she'd expected nothing less. I gathered my papers calmly, turned to my sister. "It's done." We walked out together. I didn't look back. Outside, the air smelled like rain. My phone buzzed once in my hand. A voicemail. I listened. Valora's voice, smooth, but shaking. "You think you've won? You'll regret this." I stood there for a moment, breathing slowly. Then I smiled, just barely. "Not this time." That's what I whispered that night, standing alone outside the hall, phone still warm in my hand after Valora's final threat. And I meant it, but I knew better than to believe silence meant peace. Still, it didn't matter anymore. Months passed. Autumn settled over Charlottesville like an old quilt. Crisp air, gold leaves caught in sidewalk cracks, people preparing for holidays, life moving forward. And for the first time in years, I was letting myself do the same. Valora disappeared. No apologies, no confrontations. She simply vanished from every event, every charity gala she once dominated. Her name fell from conversations like dead weight. No one asked why. Perhaps no one cared. At first, I watched for her. I kept expecting a knock at my door, a sudden appearance in the grocery aisle, a whispered accusation in public. But it never came, only absence. Curtis asked me, once, if that made me sad. I told him the truth. No, not sad. Just lighter. He understood. My days grew quiet, simple. Work, home, healing. I opened a small photography exhibition at a local gallery, a series called After. Portraits of women and men who'd survived family betrayals, their stories told through silent images, faces lined not with defeat, but resilience. Strangers came, strangers cried, and strangers thanked me. That meant something. Delea found her own way. She started a small support group, just 6 people at first. Adults who carried childhood scars invisible to the world. Every week, they sat in that church basement and spoke truths they'd never dared voice before. She called it the second voice. Rhea's podcast picked up my story next. She told it not as gossip, but as warning, as survival. National outlets picked it up. People wrote letters, thousands of them. Mothers, sons, sisters. People who thought they were alone until they heard my voice say, "You're not." Curtis rebuilt, too. He stood on stages now, speaking about coercion within families, about manipulation disguised as care. His voice shook the first few times. It doesn't anymore. Our scars weren't gone, but we weren't hiding them either. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, a letter arrived. No return address. No handwriting I recognized. Inside, just one sentence. You embarrassed this family. Nothing else. No signature. No apology. I read it twice, standing by the kitchen counter, sunlight stretching across the floor beside me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I fed the letter into the fireplace, watched the paper curl and blacken without a sound, and as the last ash crumbled, I whispered, I know. She would never say sorry, but I didn't need her to. Weeks later, as I prepared the nursery, folding tiny clothes I'd never dared dream I'd need, I found it, tucked into the back of a drawer, a single folded napkin, the same laurel leaf shape, one last echo. I held it in my hand for a long time. Just held it, not as a threat, not as a memory, as a relic. Then I fed it to the fire too. No hatred, no grief, just release. Curtis found me standing there, hours later, staring into the quiet embers. Are you okay? He asked softly. I looked at him, really looked, and I smiled. I am. There was no war left to fight, because we'd already won. Not by breaking her, not by proving her wrong, but by refusing to let her define us. And as I stand here now, watching the first snow fall through the nursery window, I think of you, whoever you are, listening to this. Maybe you've lived it. Maybe you're still inside it. Maybe you're waiting for someone to say, it's not your fault. So hear me now. It's not your fault. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's survival.